The big shift in exports, Peter, and from my vantage point here in Hong Kong, it's easy to see all those Western goods that are flooding China and Hong Kong, from luxury labels to cars to engineering and services. It's a big shift in the export market.
It's a big shift in our view at Breakingviews. It's also that it's foolish and unsustainable. It's not just the goods that you can see, it's also some of the services that are being exported from the Western countries to the rest of the world. And that's really evidence of a big shift in the world economy. Before the crisis, the OECD, the Rich Nations Club, ran a collective trade deficit and basically imported more than they exported, while the developing world ran a collective trade surplus. And in the last 8 quarters, that's shifted. So the OECD is now running a combined trade surplus, and that means that obviously the developing world has to run a combined trade deficit.
So what kind of vicious cycle are we setting up in terms of global trade and also deficits?
Well, it's really not necessarily about the surpluses and the deficits. I mean, to a certain extent, there needed to be some sort of rebalancing, and situations where one part of the world is in surplus and the other is in deficit for a long period of time can lead to problems, and which is ultimately what led to the crisis in the West. But the question is, if you shift it the other way, it's really a question about how those deficits are being financed. And in this case, a lot of the developing world is dependent on international sources of finance, particularly the cheap dollars that have come from, you guessed it, the West. And so as those dollars become more expensive and are being withdrawn, flighty investors pulling money out of developing markets, that demand dries up, which then has a knock-on effect back onto the rich countries which are depending on those exports to keep growth going.
And we've got to wonder, especially sitting over here in Asia, when that music is going to stop. As you mentioned, as the Fed changes course, are we going to feel a lot of pain over here?
We are feeling it. It's already being felt.
Yeah,
And
you
clearly
can
the
feel
cost
it
of
here.
capital,
I agree.
as we've discussed, is going up. But that's really, so that's the big adjustment that's taking place, and it can't last.
Big worries over the shift in exports, what it's going to mean for emerging markets and the West going forward.